The heat did not break when the sky turned to ash. Outside, the rain beat a relentless, rhythmic assault against the carved lattice windows, drowning the imperial gardens in mud and crushed green leaves. Inside the silk-draped bed, the air remained thick with the metallic, suffocating scent of sandalwood and possession. There had been no mercy in the way Crown Prince Li Junting claimed what his draconic chi demanded. Every touch of his cool, heavy hands had felt like a brand scorching into Si Hua's skin, systematically mapping a territory the tyrant now completely owned. Si Hua had kept his eyes locked shut, his fingers tearing at the embroidered silk blankets as his breaths came in shallow, broken gasps. He had tried to anchor his mind to his hatred, to ground himself in the bitter memory of his past, but the trap of his own dormant inconstitution had betrayed him entirely. The ragged, breathless sounds of absolute surrender that had eventually been dragged from his throat still echoed in the quiet corners of his mind, tasting like ash. Hours had bled into one another, a blurring cycle of heat and exhaustion, until the primal madness finally receded into the shadows of the room. As the first bleak, gray light of dawn filtered through the steam of the rain-slicked courtyard, the suffocating weight finally shifted. Junting arose. The soft, deep rhythm of his breathing gave way to the sharp rustle of dark brocade robes. From the hollow sanctuary of the bed, Si Hua watched the towering silhouette of his captor move through the dim morning mist. The prince didn't speak. He didn't offer a single glance back. The heavy wooden doors clicked shut, and the iron latch slid home with a heavy, final thud that locked Si Hua back into his isolation. The exact second the heavy footsteps faded down the long corridor, the fragile mask of the scholar shattered. A raw, agonizing sob tore from Si Hua's throat as he dragged his broken body out of the ruined sheets. His legs shook. His legs shook violently, his knees nearly buckling from the deep, throbbing ache radiating through his meridians, but pure terror kept him upright. He stumbled blindly toward the wooden bathing basin in the corner. The water was freezing, matching the bleak morning light, but he plunged himself into it without hesitation. Seizing a rough linen cloth, Si Hua began to scrub at his pale skin with frantic, punishing strokes. He scraped at his collarbone, his shoulders, his chest, rubbing the flesh until it was flushed a painful raw red. He wanted to peel away the phantom weight of the prince's fingers. He wanted to gouge out the smell of sandalwood that seemed permanently burned into his senses. Tears of bitter shame and raw frustration hot against his cheeks as he tried desperately to erase every trace of the man he loathed. But as the water turned cold against his skin, a sharp, sudden spike of adrenaline cut through his grief. The clock is ticking. Lady Myling would not sit idly by while her bloodline was insulted by the crown princesses, and when a powerful martial house sought blood, they did not strike the heavily guarded palace walls. They targeted the softest, most vulnerable spot. They would hunt down his defenseless parents and sister to pull the scholar's lineage up by its roots. Si Hua dragged himself out of the basin, his breath hitching in his chest. Shivering, he threw a simple, unadorned white inner robe over his bruised shoulders, tying the silk belt with clumsy, trembling fingers. He collapsed onto the heavy sandalwood desk, his hands shaking so violently, he nearly spilled the dark ink as he ground the stone. Snatching a small scrap of raw silk, his brush flew across the fabric in a hurried, tense script, the characters sharp and desperate. Father, do not question what I ask of you, and do not delay for even a single incense stick's time. By the time this reaches your hands in a few days, a private carriage will be waiting at the eastern gate of the capital. It will take you straight to the southern docks, where a secure merchant vessel is prepared to carry you across the sea, far beyond the borders of this empire. You are in grave, immediate danger. The crown princess has been punished because of me, and her military clan will surely seek bloody revenge by targeting our ancestral home. I implore you will not look back. What matters most is that you survive. I will find my way to you when you are finally safe. His heart stuck in his throat as he blew gently on the wet ink, folding the silk into a tiny, tight square. Sending a servant or a rider through the palace gates was suicide. Junting's guards would intercept anyone on foot before they reached the outer walls. He had to trust the sky as he always did. Limping heavily, Si Hua crossed to the farthest corner of the pavilion and pulled aside a heavy, damp tapestry. Hidden behind the dark wood paneling sat a small bamboo cage holding a black cloud swift, a silent, specially trained messenger bird he had smuggled in weeks ago for a nightmare just like this. With trembling fingers, he tied the silk square securely around the bird's slender leg. He carried the small creature to the lattice window, pressing his forehead against its feathers for a split second as he whispered a desperate, broken prayer into the storm. Then he pushed it out. The little black bird darted instantly into the gray sky, its wings cutting through the torrential downpour as it flew fast and true toward his father's estate. Si Hua gripped the wet wooden window frame, his knuckles turning white as he stared into the weeping clouds. His face was hollow, his breathing shallow, completely trapped in the agonizing torture of the weight. All he could do now was pray to the ancestors that the bird would outrun the blades. For 3 days following the release of the cloud swift, Si Hua walked on a razor's edge. He forced his mind to suppress every instinct of terror, burying his hatred beneath a perfectly crafted mask of compliance. When Crown Prince Li Junting visited the pavilion, Si Hua did not flinch away. He knelt gracefully at the low sandalwood table, his white robes pristine, pouring the steaming green tea with steady, elegant hands. He kept his gaze lowered, submitting to the heavy, suffocating weight of the prince's draconic presence without a single word of defiance. But Li Junting was no fool. He was a predator who had conquered battlefields and political courts alike. Silence from a man whose gaze was usually as sharp as a scholar's blade was entirely unnatural. As Si Hua raised the delicate porcelain cup to offer it, a massive hand suddenly shot out, striking the cup away. It shattered against the wooden floorboards, hot tea splashing across the rug. Before Si Hua could even gasp, Junting's hand clamped brutally around the prince, yanked him forward with terrifying violence, pulling Si Hua half across the low table until their faces were inches apart. "Why are you so obedient today?" Junting's voice was a lethal, silken whisper that froze the blood in Si Hua's veins. The prince's dark eyes narrowed, piercing straight through Si Hua's fragile facade. "What exactly are you hiding behind those pretty, lowered lashes?" "Nothing, Your Highness," Si Hua choked out, his fingers desperately gripping the prince's thick brocade sleeve as his jaw ached under the crushing grip. "I have simply learned my place." Junting's grip tightened, his thumb pressing dangerously hard into the sensitive skin of Si Hua's cheek. "Do not play games with me. Nothing gets past my sight in this empire. I have eyes in the shadows, in the walls, in the very sky above this palace. If you are digging a grave behind my back, I will bury you in it. Blind panic seized Si Hua's heart. He knows about the bird. Desperate to shut the prince up, to distract the razor-sharp mind before it deduced the exact truth, Si Hua did the unthinkable. He surged upward, entirely on his own accord, and pressed his trembling lips against Junting's. It was a clumsy, frantic kiss, driven purely by terror. Si Hua leaned his slight weight against the towering man, trying to offer a willing, physical submission to the tyrant. Instead, it had the exact opposite effect. Junting did not melt into the touch. He went entirely rigid. The prince recognized the metallic taste of fear and manipulation instantly. A dark, furious sneer twisted his handsome features. With a violent shove, Junting tore himself away and threw Si Hua backward. Si Hua crashed hard into the silk-draped bed. The breath knocked cleanly from his lungs. He lay there, trembling violently, staring up as the prince stood over him, eyes burning with a cold, terrifying suspicion. Without another word, Junting turned on his heel, his dark robes snapping like a whip, and stormed out of the pavilion. Days of torment. For the next several days, Si Hua lived in an absolute hell of his own making. Every time the wooden doors creaked, his heart violently seized. Did the prince intercept the letter? Did he find the bird? But Junting did not return, and no executioners came to drag him to the courtyard. The agonizing silence meant the tyrant lacked concrete proof. By Si Hua's frantic calculations, the Cloud Swift had surely reached his father's estate by now. His family had to be packing. They were likely securing the carriage to flee. He just needed to survive long enough to find a single blind spot in the palace security, to slip out into the city and see his parents and sister at the docks for one final, desperate goodbye before they vanished across the sea forever.